Nino Rakichevich. I was born and raised in Yugoslavia. Now I have to say Serbia. I've been a photographer for 36 years. I came to America in 1988 to go to Brooks Institute of Photography. I've been a photographer ever since, and in the last 30 years in America, I've been a photographer and also educator. I was teaching at Brooks for 14 years. I was teaching fashion photography, celebrity portraiture, and street photography. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do when I'm in Paris. I go there every summer, last 8 summers actually, for Fashion Week, and I also do street photography. But this photo is, Paris is also close to my first days with Sony. 8 years ago I bought my first Sony mirrorless camera for my very first trip to Paris to photograph the Fashion Week. And this photo is like a few years back before I completely switched to Sony. And in that time, most photographers were still using Canons and Nikons. And now, last year I had an exhibition at Sony Gallery at Sony Square, and this photo was displayed. And one photographer came up to me and said, "Nino, don't you think this is bad for Sony that all these photographers in the photo are using Nikons and Canons?" I said, well, this was a few years back. I was using Sony, and who do you think has the best photo here? So that was early days. That was a few years back. Now I'm completely Sony. It's been now a few years now, I think 5 years since I completely switched. And this photo was last summer in Paris. So that was backstage, and only very few photographers can get the backstage passes. And there was 5 of us, all of us were using Sony. That's today, 2018. All right. So these are the cameras that I use all the time. I actually have 11 cameras, 11 Sony cameras. I have everything that Sony ever made. I have twice as many lenses too. So I use A7R III. That's my main camera right now. I use A6000. I have A9. I have A7R III. RX1R2. This is RX106, the really small one. It can fit in your pocket. I have one camera with me all the time. When I'm in Paris, I try not to be at the same places with other photographers. You know, that's one rule that I learned 36 years ago from my mentor Tomislav Peternek. And this is during a Paris Fashion Week. You see, I'm not with other photographers. I'm sitting in the front row. I'm not supposed to be there. I'm not a spectator, I'm a photographer, but I sat there, and then I turned and I saw this beautiful lady next to me. She had a mirror glasses, like, oh, I'm gonna photograph entire show using her mirror glasses. So that's what I did. I photographed entire show. Again, I have the photographers in the background that shows that nobody else has the same photo. So anyway, again, I used only available light. I don't use flash when I'm during a Fashion Week, just available light. So dynamic range of the Sony cameras it's what allows me to do that. Sony cameras have the best dynamic range, and I really take the full advantage of it. Another thing is, of course, sometimes I have to be in a booth with other photographers. That's when I'm photographing runway. And for that, this was shot with A9. I was one of the few lucky photographers who had that camera very early, and I took it to Paris Fashion Week. And of course, I was a superstar because everybody wanted to see that camera. And so the first photo on the left, you see, I always have on a face detection. So model just comes out, and the sensor in the camera picks up the face and stays locked on it. So the focus is on her entire time. You see, the other model, it didn't focus on the model because her face was turned. So it found the face. It took a split second. Model just came out, it found the face and stayed on it. So I know some of you guys are not photographing fashion, but it doesn't matter. For weddings, for everything else, as long as you're photographing people, this is amazing feature. So Another one, okay, this is by far my favorite feature of the Sony cameras because I photograph people mostly, and it's a feature that only Sony cameras have. It's eye out of focus. I know somebody came up also with eye out of focus right now, but Sony is the only system that can do eye out of focus in continuous mode. Why is that so important? Because unless model is staying still, you have to track them, all right? When they're moving, you know, that sensor is finding the eye and stays on it entire time. Like that's perfect example right here. I was photographing this model, you know, on the right-hand side, and I really didn't care about the other ones. They're just basically props walking by, and the focus stayed on her eyes, and she is the main subject. It really is a great tool that I use all the time. This is also another example. That's the same model later on when she was dressed. So this is all backstage. This is all before the show. And the one on the right, you see, she has all this stuff around on her head. Eye out of focus finds the eye. That's what's important for us. And it also takes a split second. We don't have the time on our own. I mean, without that feature, it will take me longer, and I wouldn't be sure if I have that, if I have eyes in focus. So it's really important feature. Next photos, I'm going to show you. Okay, everybody knows how hard to get eyes in focus wide open. If you're shooting 85-1.4, and the one on the right was shot with 85-1.4, the one on the left was 55-1.8, wide open. The one on the right is backstage available light. It looks like studio, but it wasn't. It was backstage with available light, 3200 ISO. F2, I closed down a little bit, and you know you cannot, see that there's a hair in front of her eyes. If you didn't have the eye out of focus, it will be blurry, I guarantee you. You will have a hard time. It will take a few seconds really to get that, and I don't know if you might even get that. But eye out of focus works differently. It's, you know, it finds the eye, and I was actually almost shocked. I pressed that button for eye out of focus, found the eye, and locked on it. I was like, oh my God, wow. Okay, boom, 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 I was done. That's it. That's how well it works. The one on the left, 55-1.8 Zeiss. That's one of the first lenses I got because it's simply amazing lens. Wide open, boom, sharp, eye out of focus. So also when I'm in Paris, I also do editorial stuff for magazines. When the fashion shows are done, I shoot editorials, and dynamic range is the most important thing. It's more important than megapixels. I think every professional photographer will agree with that. 42 megapixels is plenty for me. Even 24 is good. I can do pretty much anything with 24. 42 is plenty. But dynamic range is what's the most important for us. The one on the left was shot in the middle of a day. Available light, I didn't even use any reflectors. I was able to get the full details there. And the one on the right was inside, 3600 ISO, in-body image stabilization. I was hand-holding the camera. It was 1/30th of a second. Boom, tech sharp. No problem at all. I use mostly available light because I simply can't do that because of the dynamic, amazing dynamic range of a Sony cameras. So that's me in action. This is behind the scenes. That's me with my favorite lenses that I use all the time for fashion, 24-70 GM and 85-1.4 GM. All right. So that's when I'm shooting editorials. That was editorial shoot. And I'm going to make a big point about this. I had 4 models, I had a makeup artist, you had a stylist, you had a designer, you have a fashion editor of the magazine there with me. If my card got corrupted, okay, if my card got corrupt, I will lose all the files. And then we'll have to come up with some kind of excuse. I'm a professional, I don't like excuses. So for me, it's very important to have 2 card slots. So I have to have the second card slot to back up everything, all right? So that's in Paris. I cannot just fly back to Paris to reshoot this. So it's important. For me, it's very important. So this photo here shows the one on the left was shot middle of the day, basically with 24 to 70 GM 2.8. The one on the right, 85 1.4 wide open GM. Those are my two go-to lenses for fashion. But I have everything else too. So anyway, dynamic range. Again, I told you it's the most important thing for me. That was backstage. Show was over and model is leaving. He said, bye Nino, and I'm inside. And you see, she's outside. And that shows how important that dynamic range is. I was able to get the details in the highlights and also in the dark areas. And to me, that's the most important thing. Okay, because I don't use flash. I mean, I cannot set up the lights for these. These are the split-second moments. So that's why it's important for me. Also, I take pictures all the time. I've been a photographer for 36 years, and that's why I do street photography. Because when I do fashion, that's fine, it's over. But then I walk on the streets, I always have a camera with me. I know some of you guys will say, well, I have my iPhone with me. Come on, let's get serious, all right? I have an iPhone too, but I also have 11 cameras. Okay, this is as small as an iPhone and it kicks its ass. I mean, it's for sure, it's 10 times better. And look, it's kind of cool too. So anyway, 24 to 200 zoom on these. 20 megapixels, shoots RAW, shoots 4K video, amazing. So the one on the left was with a camera that's 42 megapixels. The one on the right was shot here on a JFK with this little camera. That's RX106, all right? And I have no problem photographing it. I'm a shy person. I know most people don't believe me, but I'm a shy person. But when I have a camera on me, I'm not shy at all. And I make friends wherever I go. I don't really blend in, but they're my friends now, all right? So when I'm here in New York, I just walk around the streets with a camera and I get photos. I mean, this is my favorite city for street photography. You just need to go to Times Square. I mean, if you cannot get photos, you're not looking around. Come on. So this was shot like a few years back. And I just love the story behind it. And it's a split second. And that's what happened. I didn't have to make it up. I just started following these ladies, and that was it. And then Times Square, New York. Look at this. You just have to be there, and something is going to happen. They were protesting. I was just there, and I got this photo. And then I was here in New York for New York Fashion Week, and I was passing by the park, and I saw this guy feeding the birds. Then suddenly the squirrel came up. I was like, wow, okay, I had a camera with me. It's not the iPhone, it's the camera, all right? iPhone cannot do that. I'm sorry. If you know, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I have cameras with me wherever I go. I'm in Europe 4 months of the year, basically. I live in America, but I travel a lot. So I was walking in the streets of Belgrade, and then I got this photo. And then I'm working on like a few projects right now. I'm working on a book on Roma people. And whenever I go to Europe, I go to the Roma villages, and that's how I get these photos. Like this guy, for example, he was the European champion in boxing. He has a golden glove. You cannot tell it. That's the way he lives, all right? And I was walking around. He got a little tough with me. He said, oh, what are you doing? Well, I said, well, I'm a photographer. I pulled out the camera. It was a little camera. And he didn't feel threatened. He was like, oh, you're probably not serious photographer, whatever. He started talking to me. We started talking, I said, excuse me, I would love to take photos of you. And then he told me who he is. I said, well, I don't know. We started talking. That's how I got a photo of him, all right? And then I got to, meet some other people. They invited me. They were all drunk, but they invited me into their house, their brothers. And I was like, I don't know if I should go in or not or whatever. I got in. In that time, I brought my A7R3, used available light, 42 megapixels. It was like 3600 ISO, f4, handheld, no problem at all. Okay? So I do lots of street photography, and you guys can do that too, as long as you have a camera with you. And Sony cameras are small and amazing, with amazing dynamic range. There's no excuse, all right? So that's me. Thank you.